Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to part 2 of the video game Myths and Urban Legends Iceberg. If you want to watch part 1, that includes the first 2 layers of the iceberg, you can find it here on the screen or listed down in the description below. Before we hop into the next 2 layers, I'd like to thank everyone who corrected me on some facts I got wrong in the first part of the iceberg. I'll do a segment near the end of this video correcting what exactly I got wrong, but just wanted to say up top here that I will fix these for the full cut of the whole iceberg with up-to-date and correct information. Apologies on that, it is still just me doing everything for these videos and for the channel, so often something will slip up, whether that's on the editing side or in this case proofing some of my facts. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into layer 3 and 4 of the video game Myths and Urban Legends Iceberg. The Purple Prizes myth from Super Mario 64 DS was created to be a newer version of the L is Real mystery after many assumed that Waluigi would be playable in Super Mario 64 DS for a number of reasons, including the fact that Wario was present, and since there was already 4 playable characters, there was a good chance the game had a 5th secret character to play as. The initial post was made on a DeviantArt account from a user claiming they found a mysterious Purple Prizes ad from a video game magazine that showed Waluigi playable and revealed a pretty vague way of unlocking him, stating, "Find all the stars and be the fastest foot racer in the land. Afterwards, a secret switch will reveal my door, brother. All that remains is a challenge from the Rabbit King for its key." Alright, what the hell does being the fastest foot racer in the land even mean? I know the fastest foot racer, and I ain't him, bruh. I'll never be him. Looking back, it's shocking that this fooled anyone, as some of the renders of Waluigi are very obviously fake, and the presentation is definitely a little odd. It was just enough to fool people though, as people started to run with the mysterious flyer and started the hunt for Waluigi. History was repeating itself. Why do we keep making the same mistakes? A few of the theories to getting Waluigi included 100%ing the game, then going to the top of the castle where Yoshi was chilling in the original, and you'd find Waluigi there waiting to be unlocked. Another theory involved a purple rabbit. The main fuel behind this theory was the fact that Nintendo accidentally left an image of the purple rabbit in the instruction booklet for the game, making many people believe it was still there and it just hadn't been found yet, including the aforementioned Rabbit King from the flyer. Obviously, this would all culminate into being fake, with the original creator even coming out and revealing the truth, but it wouldn't stop some future hoaxes surrounding Waluigi's involvement in the game, which he just isn't. When are we gonna learn Nintendo hates Waluigi and only uses him for roster fodder in sports games? Oh, what's that? We're doing Super Mario Badminton? He's the baddest badminton player in the lands. SpongeBob Saves the Day was a click-and-find flash game that came out in the 2010s that seemed to have quite a fan base. So much so that fans took it upon themselves to go into the game's backend files and found that some of the environment scenes contained sprite sheets right off the side of the screen, and these contained a pretty strange entity. Well, it didn't belong in Bikini Bottom, I'll tell you that. This guy would come to be known as Yummer by fans online, but according to the developers, his name was just simply Yum. This character was apparently being used as a placeholder in the game, made to be disturbing to the point it would be obvious to replace him by someone reviewing the game scenes. However, they mistakenly left the abomination in the sprite sheet of the game, and so close to the game that I wouldn't be surprised if kids felt like they were being watched while playing this game, because technically they were, you just couldn't see them back. I don't know, you could find this guy hilarious, but to me he looks like No David took an acid bath. Noki Bay is already one of the most unnerving levels in Super Mario Sunshine, featuring a boss battle that I hate going back to even to this day, but it also contained one of the strangest red coin missions in the game as well. The mission starts where you talk to the Elder Noki, who then voodoo shrinks Mario down to size, breaking every single bone in his body along the way and shoving him into his old used Jack Daniels bottle. After that, you are now tiny and searching for red coins inside the bottle, which is pretty barren, only containing ruins at the bottom of the bottle. Inside the ruins is a strange door that Mario can't interact with directly, but curious players decided to try and clip the camera behind the door, and what they found was pretty strange to say the least. A book entity can be seen placed in a very small room behind the inaccessible door, and after this came to light, the theories started to pour out, and a few of them are just straight up crazy. and I'm here for it. The most likely theory is this was a leftover scrapped mission that may have used the book as an item during said mission, but instead it was scrapped for a much simpler red coin mission. A crazier theory references a quote from our main man Miyamoto, in which he stated, "What if everything that you see is more than what you see? The space that appears empty is a door to another world. What if something appears that shouldn't? You either dismiss it or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Wait, you either dismiss it or accept that there is more to the world than you think. Perhaps it is really a doorway, and if you choose to go inside, you'll find many unexpected things." So many believe the door here is what Miyamoto was referencing in this quote, and I just gotta say, that's hilarious. I don't know if we should be quoting everything Miyamoto says all the time, especially late at night after he's had a few. I do see a kind of loose connection, but this is such a stretch that there's no way it's true. In reality, the book will likely never be explained, because why would it? It's such a nothing object that just so happened to be accidentally discovered by curious players. Listen, I'm no expert on FNAF or the lore or anything FNAF. I wrote this entry before I fucked up on the last one, just so you know. Obviously, I don't know much about FNAF, but I do know the significance of the purple guy, and it was once rumored that he appeared in animatronic form in the second Five Nights at Freddy's. This rumor started off from a video that was uploaded in 2014, which showed a quick flash of what appeared to be an animatronic version of the purple guy. Looking back, it wasn't the best edited video, and the purple guy literally only shows up for a frame, making it really hard to believe and even see, but it was just enough for players to buy into it. Plus, with the game already having strange RNG within the gameplay itself, it wasn't super far-fetched to assume that there was some super hidden Easter egg like this. However, it was revealed to be a hoax, as the purple guy animatronic was an edited version of the Golden Freddy animatronic, and I must say, it's a pretty convincing repalette here. The video itself is pretty rough to go back to and watch, but I do give it the benefit of doubt with time. But listen, I can make a more convincing video right here. Luigi's Mansion is already an off-putting enough game if you were young enough playing it, but there was a lot of small things that made the game particularly eerie. One of these things was a glitch that occurs in the game when Luigi answers the phone in the telephone room. With a strike of lightning outside, the wall will light up with Luigi's shadow, revealing that his shadow is levitating, making it seem like Luigi's shadow itself is hanging. I remember stumbling across this rumor online and thinking it was actually a real Easter egg that Nintendo included, maybe even implying Luigi is dead throughout the whole game. It was truly unnerving when I first ran across it, but I don't know, dude. I was spooked out by Squidward's suicide. I wasn't able to handle Luigi offing himself like this. However, this is a simple lighting glitch that accidentally casts Luigi's shadow a bit higher than it should be on the wall. It was never meant to imply Luigi had hung himself. I mean, I get it. I know that beta Game Over showed Luigi really down bad, but I never took him to do something like this, man. Final Fantasy VII wasn't the only Final Fantasy playing with people's emotions, as the next in line, Final Fantasy VIII, has a moment that stuck with players for years. This particular moment in question comes when Squall is hit with a large icicle at the end of the first disc, and seemingly dies as he is sent into a pit behind him. However, upon starting disc 2, it seems Squall is fine, and the strange moment is seemingly overlooked by the game's story. The out-of-place scene made many players believe that Squall actually did die during this cutscene, and the rest of the game takes place as a final lapse of consciousness in the way of a dream. There is a lot of evidence to support this theory, like the fact the second part of the game after this is starkly different from the grounded environments and enemies in the first disc. Not only that, but Squall is seen without any injury, and the game does little to explain how he healed himself without so much as a scar left over. During the ending cutscene of the game, the Death of Squall cutscene is randomly shown again, hinting at the fact that this was Squall's true ending as he passes, with this disturbing ass scene taking place. Many believe this is a visual representation of Squall's last breaths as the game finally ends. While the theory is really convincing with several pieces of evidence adding up, the series developer Yoshinori Kitase stated it's not true, but he found it very interesting and poked at the idea of reworking the story if they ever remade it to include this little twist. Unlike the reviving Aerith myth, this one kinda works in the opposite way, attempting to reveal the true fate of the main character Squall, but it appears he got the same treatment as the Emperor did in Star Wars, you know. He fell down a pit, but somehow he's straight.
It probably hits the asphalt, implodes,
Yeah,
right?
explodes.
Then, whatever, right? Whatever he does, then you hear, in the fucking trailer,
He's alive.
He's alive?
Super Mario Galaxy DS was a rumored port of Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii that promised a full-fledged version of Super Mario Galaxy that was unlockable through the Wii version. This rumor started when a trailer for the DS version was uploaded online, and it looked really convincing, showing gameplay of both Mario and Luigi playing simultaneously. Most impressively was the upload date of the video, which came out a month after the game initially released. It turns out this was fake and was actually made as a project for a design studies class in which the goal of the project was to make a viral video. Pablo Belmonte decided to use the hype around Super Mario Galaxy at the time and made a super convincing trailer for a port of the game on one of the most popular handhelds at the time. The time spent and impressive showcase would only land Pablo a fucking B+, as the story is told, which is honestly highway robbery. That should have been an A+ easy. There are a few points of the project that reveal that it's obviously fake, like how to unlock the version of the game would be to collect and feed all 121 power stars to a secret Luma, who would then unlock golden Nintendo DSs, which would unlock the Nintendo DS version of the game. Not only is this just extremely unrealistic, the nail in the coffin is the point that every star collected in the DS version would grant the player 10 Wii points to spend on the eShop, which is a giant stretch, thinking Nintendo would ever give away free money like this. Overall though, the project is super impressive and has spawned a full-blown passion project to make a playable version of Super Mario Galaxy on DS, which there is a playable demo floating out there on the internet right now if you're interested. Just don't expect any of the cool parts of this rumor to be in there, like the multiplayer or the free Wii points. I mean, shit, you could technically give out free Wii points now because they don't do anything, so I guess have them all. One of the more obscure urban legends from San Andreas was a bit less known than the Bigfoot legend discussed in the first episode. This one features an antagonist from another Rockstar game known as Manhunt, in which players have claimed to see Piggsy roaming around parts of San Andreas. This all started back during a separate investigation back in the day of the Shady Creeks creature in 2008, where near the end of the video a strange creature can be seen staring the player down. This sparked a hunt for the creature, and many players started to claim it was Piggsy for Manhunt. There is a bit of evidence supporting this claim, like the fact Piggsy is already technically in the game, featured as an action figure located at Zero's RC shop. Unfortunately, due to heavy modding, it's impossible to tell if there was any evidence that this is actually real. People have searched the back end of the game too, and there's no Piggsy. But it's still cool that Piggsy can make it into the game in some way, even if it's not as an actual base NPC. By the way, I think that Piggsy is also way more terrifying to run into in the middle of the night in the woods of San Andreas than Bigfoot. I probably wouldn't stand as much of a chance against the Bigfoot, but man, at least there's a chance he won't eat me. He might just eat my babies.
You eat babies. You have to survive. Everyone knows that.
The 80s were a pretty rough time, dude. I wasn't around, but just the evidence left over from that time, I'm not jealous of y'all. I'll just say that. Some of the rumors that were going around back in the day were the direct result of no immediate access to naughty websites, and gamers were just left to their own degenerative minds. This is really how the Nude Samus rumor began for the first Metroid game on NES back in the day. The ending of the game already features a bombshell moment, or at least considered that back in the day, that the whole time Samus was actually a woman. While some people wanted to see a little bit more and started rumors that there was a way to see even more from Samus at the end of the game. And some of these methods included beating the game multiple times, 100%ing the game, and other methods that clearly never worked. While I think this highlights the desperation of the yesteryears, it's also not that surprising. I mean, leave a bunch of horned up gamers with the mental image of this before the game ends. They're gonna be searching for more, dude. Mew and Mewtwo, being two of the most powerful Pokemon, at least at their height, left room for players and fans of Pokemon wondering if there was ever going to be a Mewthree. While there still hasn't been a Mewthree added to the series, there have been several references to the non-existent Pokemon throughout the years, making fans hopeful for a future appearance. There have been specific rumors surrounding Mewthree's existence in the Pokemon games throughout another theory we'll talk about further down the list, known as Pokegods, which are a rumored lot of Pokemon that are often just fan creations that are rumored to be very rare and hidden in the original games. The biggest semi-official reference to Mewthree comes from a Pokemon manga that shows a combination of Clefairy and Mewtwo's DNA, which comes out to be Mewthree, and it even states this in the manga. While the Pokemon does switch back after the battle with Mewtwo, this is the closest we've ever come to a semi-official Mewthree appearance. Other than this, an offhand comment is mentioned by a scientist in the anime that states that they are now done working on Mewtwo, that they should probably start work on Mewthree. It's a pretty throwaway line, but it's still one of the only official mentions of Mewthree. Some believe the appearance of Mewtwo in armor from the film Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, a great piece of cinema by the way, is actually Mewthree since he was technically stronger than Mewtwo, but that's kind of a stretch in my book. Hopefully we will see a Mewthree one day, and I hope it takes on a brand new look, the likes we haven't seen yet. Before the disaster that was the Halo Paramount show, the idea that Master Chief's face being a mystery was pretty much respected throughout most of the games. Now, I don't know where to fall on the effect of hiding Chief's face and how this plays further into the series and story and lore of the games, and I don't know, I don't think I'd die on the hill that he's never taken it off. He's got to take a shower or a huge runny diarrhea. The games do show that Spartans keeping their helmets on is a thing, as when a Spartan is about to die, they'll take it off in an act of defiance, and can be seen many times throughout the series when a Spartan is about to die. It's like in a TV show when the side character gets a little bit too much runtime. However, there are also scenes where other characters have seen Master Chief's face in the games even when the player isn't privy to it, so it's not like he's running around with the helmet on all the time anyways. The games have slowly revealed and teased more of Master Chief's actual face, showing close-ups like in Halo 4's legendary ending, but even though the show revealed Chief's face way too soon into it, I don't think it's the worst thing to maybe see what Master Chief looks like one day, because at the end of the day, it's just gonna be an old white guy's face, right? So it's not all that mysterious. What do you guys think? Would you rather never actually know, or do you think they'll just piecemeal Chief's face with each game release like they did with those action figures back in the day, where you get like a Wolverine action figure and you get Thanos' right foot or some weird shit like that? This is going to be pretty heartbreaking to dig back into for me, because I'm a big fan of Mario Odyssey, and the idea that there was a really good chance that Isle Delfino would have made it in as a kingdom but was scrapped, it still tears me up today. I already lost my shit in the game at the references to my favorite game ever, Super Mario 64, but Sunshine references would have sent me through the fucking roof. The worst part is, while this isn't confirmed officially, all of the evidence points to the fact that this was 100% planned for the final game, but was likely cut due to time constraints. Evidence left in the game and early promotion art show that Isle Delfino was definitely part of the map and located just off the left side of the Mushroom Kingdom. Not only that, but in the final game, if you get the lighting to hit the globe right, you can see a bumpy texture on the globe that clearly used to belong to Isle Delfino, and like a shitty apartment complex, they just painted right over that bitch thinking no one would notice, no one would be the wiser. Some think that this is an Easter egg, but the shoddy job to cover their tracks really proves to me and many that this was 100% cut content, and due to them pushing the release date up for the game, they decided to leave it out. Hopefully we'll see something including Isle Delfino, even if it's just a kingdom in the sequel. But hell, it's been so long, I'm not sure we're even getting a sequel at this point. But at least we have things like Super Mario Sunshine Eclipse keeping the Sunshine hype alive and well. I haven't got around to playing it yet because of hurricanes and icebergs, but I plan to get to it soon. It's looking pretty wild. As we've seen thus far, urban legends in games are often ignored or brushed off by developers, and rarely they are embraced and encouraged by the original creators. Perhaps the most surprising story of an urban legend turned into a real character happened with Ermac in the original Mortal Kombat. If you're familiar with the series nowadays, you've probably heard of Ermac, as he's a reoccurring character since Mortal Kombat 3, but before this, the character never even existed. Due to a pretty common error in the original Mortal Kombat game, the game would enter into a developer testing mode which would switch fighters' color palettes to their default red patterns, and their names would change to read Ermac. This led many players to believe that Ermac was a secret character in the game that was a fourth variation of the Scorpion palette. However, this wasn't a new character at all and was the default version of Scorpion with red, and the name Ermac comes from the paraphrasing of error macros. The fact that Ed Boon and the team were so aware of their player base that not only 2 years later Ermac was a playable character is honestly really cool, and man, I wish we still had developers like this nowadays. We do, but man, they are far and few between. The trophy system from Smash Bros. Is one of the things that made me fall in love with the game, as it made me feel like even though all these characters couldn't make it into the game as their own fighters, they're still represented in a small way. This often included secondary characters, and it was really cool to see them remodeled to fit the melee style. One of the ones that stood out to many was Daisy, and it wasn't because she's straight up slaying right here, alright? Maybe she is, but that's besides the point. If you clip the camera behind Daisy's hair, you can find a misplaced eye texture on the back of her head, making for a pretty gross image. I guess you could say she's got eyes in the back of her head. Yeah, there's never been an official statement from Sakurai or Nintendo on the mistake, but the game was known to be rushed, so errors like this shouldn't be that surprising. This is something Nintendo struggles with often, like when Donkey Kong's model in Mario Kart Wii had a misplaced mouth texture on his toe. Who knew a little body horror with Nintendo characters would go a long way? I remember people trying to say that the third eye was canon on Daisy and every iteration of her had it, but of course this was just taking the simple developer mistake to another level. The moon is one of the more mysterious places in the Pokemon universe, with urban legends of Pokemon only being able to be caught on the moons, starting all the way back in Pokemon Sapphire, Ruby, and Emerald. There was a rumor that you could take a spaceship from Moss Deep City to travel to the moon in order to catch the legendary Pokemon Jirachi and Deoxys. This was supposedly based on the number of successful rocket launches the station had, and when it reached a designated number, be it 50, 99, or 100, the player would then be able to use the rocket themselves to get straight up into space. This turned out to be fake, as there unfortunately is no way to get to space in these games, but this wasn't exactly the end of this rumor. In a twist of fate, this urban legend became somewhat true, as in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you're actually able to go to space on the back of Rayquaza in order to fight and catch Deoxys. It's never been stated if this was a reference to the rumor from back in the day by the game developers, but at least it seems to be a slight nod to this urban legend. As far as Pokemon urban legends go, this one wasn't that wild and seemed like it had a good chance of being real, but alas, you can be no Rocket Man in Pokemon. The Diablo 2 chat gym is a legendary myth from the early PC gaming days that fooled everyone who ran into it, just about everyone. This occurred in the chat menus of Diablo 2, where a small gem could be seen and is clickable. After clicking the gem, it would change color with a text pop-up reading "Gem activated." With a pretty vague description, players were never really sure what the gem did, if anything at all. There was a lot of speculation that the gem would buff your other gems in your inventory when getting a perfect gem click. A perfect gem click occurred randomly and simply stated in the chat box "perfect gem activated" when it was obtained. This was thought to make every other gem in your inventory upgraded to perfect gems, but it turns out that this wasn't the case at all. And according to Blizzard at the time, when questioned about the gem's purpose, they simply stated, "The gem is working as intended." It wasn't until years later Jay Wilson, lead designer of Diablo 3, stated that the gem isn't coming back in that game and that it definitely didn't do anything in Diablo 2 in the first place. It seems that this was simply a troll on the part of developers to waste players' time and making them think they're actually doing something in the game, when in reality, it did absolutely nothing. It comes off as a pretty elaborate troll when considering the blunt response from Blizzard and the constant vagueness when discussing the gem itself. It's a pretty cool troll, pretty legendary. Now, only if they could troll the whole industry and release good games again, that'd be really cool. Maybe we'll work on that one, guys. It's time to hit an actual real phenomena from GTA San Andreas. It's about fucking time. And this one's actually pretty creepy if you run into it naturally in the game. The ghost cars in GTA San Andreas sounds like your typical fake rumor from a GTA game, but this occurs in a form in San Andreas, and if you're in the right setting, it can be downright creepy. There are several places across the map where old junker cars will spawn when the player is near them on top of a hill and will naturally roll down the hill, making it seem like the car is driving itself. This can only happen with certain cars, and it won't always happen in the same spots, but if you're lucky or unlucky enough to see it, it'll likely look out of place. The cars always, at best, look like they are drivers whose brakes were cut, and at worst look like a cult of sentient vehicles that are finally taking their independence. It's unknown if this is a simple glitch with unfortunate spawns for these vehicles, or if it was done intentionally to spook the player out. All I know is it worked, makes me feel like I'm playing out a Stephen King novel, or perhaps I'm catty corner to a Mark Wahlberg in a The Happening.
What? No!
The number stations from Fallout 3 is one of the most infamous urban legends from the game and the whole series. It tells of a player who ended up killing the radio host 3Dog, then began to hear a strange code begin to play over the radio instead of the typical music. The code is read out by a pre-recorded 3Dog who doesn't sound as excited as he did when he was doing his regular radio show before you committed third-degree murder. The numbers seem to be random, but as the story goes, internet sleuths were able to decipher some messages from the seemingly random assortment of numbers. There are an assortment of messages mainly being loose predictions of future events, like a quote that states, "I can't believe Britney's actually won an Oscar. Keep not believing it because it never happened." This date was set for February 27th, 2023, and of course no one named Britney ever won an Oscar, most likely referring to Britney Spears. Another prediction wrongly guessed the death date of the Queen, predicting it would happen in 2014, just off by just a few years on that one. Just a few. If not for the dates not lining up, there is clear evidence in the game showing that this phenomenon doesn't happen after you kill 3Dog. For example, if you do kill him, he will be replaced by Margaret in the game, who will be an unenthused employee with her job and will constantly mention the murder of 3Dog, making you feel real guilty. This was a super interesting take on a creepypasta in the Fallout universe, and it kept it grounded in that universe, making it seem legit, but unfortunately all you get from killing 3Dog is lack of sleep at night. If there was one Smash Bros character that probably should have got a spot on the roster just due to how long he's been requested, is Geno from Super Mario RPG. I've never been much of an advocate for the homie, but I think he got robbed by just getting a Mii outfit to compensate for him never really making it as a full fighter. During the last DLC packs for Ultimate, the hype for seeing Geno finally making it into the game was so real, and was evident from fans biting onto any piece of evidence to hold out hope. Surely this time it'll be true. One of the biggest leaks pertaining to Geno was known as the Cacomallow Leak, and it consisted of a leak of Mii outfits that included the Caco Demon and Mallow from Super Mario RPG. This was all the proof people needed to tie these Mii outfits to either Doom Guy or Geno getting a spot as a fighter, and since this leaked at a time where Mii costumes were really hard to mod into the game, it seemed really legit. But a few days after the leak, more Mii costume mods had began to come out, disproving the biggest piece of evidence this theory had. Of course, the leak was fake, even though it was really convincing, and whoever did the mod did a great job, especially on Mallow. Hell, this Mii costume is also the closest we ever got to getting Toad in the game too. Check out the drip. Let's do a quick drip check.
These are flame blue jeans. These are shoes that I picked up in Mexico. Ooh, this is maybe Prada. This is...
Chris Houlihan is supposedly a winner of an early Nintendo Power contest where if you won, you'd have your name entered into the newest Legend of Zelda game that would have been at the time A Link to the Past. This room actually does exist within A Link to the Past, but like the contest stated, it would be a very hard room to see, and man, they weren't lying. There still isn't a 100% foolproof way to access the room, and it's speculated that the secret room is actually only available after triggering a failsafe if Link's Y-axis returns an error in the game. Therefore, you need to try to kind of trick the game into triggering the failsafe, and while there is a few ways to increase your odds of triggering it, you need to practice it for sure. It basically consists of Link using the Pegasus boots and reaching the secret passage outside the castle in a certain way, consisting of maintaining the correct axis coordinates and ensuring you're dashing upon screen transitions. Nobody said it'd be easy. If you're lucky enough to trigger the entrance, you'll fall into a room with 45 blue rupees and a plaque on the wall that reads, "My name is Chris Houlihan. This is my top secret room. Keep it between us, okay?" There's never been an official statement from the Chris Houlihan, leading many to believe Chris doesn't even actually exist, but Nintendo has confirmed that the contest winner theory was correct, stating in a 1994 issue of Club Nintendo, a Latin Nintendo magazine at the time, stating, "Chris Houlihan is the name of a boy who won a Nintendo Power contest, and with it, he also won the right to have his name programmed in the Zelda A Link to the Past game." The most intriguing part of this mystery is that it doesn't appear as it does in the original US version in the international releases of the game, still featuring the room but without the Chris Houlihan shout out, and the room was completely removed from the Game Boy Advance remake. I guess that contest prize had an expiration date on it, Chris. I wonder if all this was in the fine print. Mr. Houlihan, we might have a case on our hands. I know a guy. He'll straighten you out. A game that is made by a guy who made Stanley Parable is for sure going to have some fuckery with it. Then you throw in that Sauce guy who made that cartoon and you'll get one of the deepest urban legends to ever grace virtual reality gaming. Accounting Plus is a VR game by William Pugh and Justin Roiland that featured quirky VR gameplay and was well received for being an early VR game that was actually polished and fleshed out. Initially, the game was just known as Accounting before an updated version was announced at the 2017 Game Awards, where the developers mentioned a secret zoo level. Other evidence of there being a secret zoo level in the game were seen in the gameplay and other hints during the trailers for the game. This is what would launch one of the most ridiculous ARGs in video games, dealing with sentient English-speaking frogs, tadpole sacrifices, and a bunch more. It sounds really dumb and cringe to me, but it's also a unique way to keep your game relevant with fans even after release. Since then, the search is still on for the zoo level, and it's only speculation if the zoo level is actually even in the game. It's not impossible that it hasn't been found yet. I mean, Stanley Parable had an achievement for not playing the game for 5 years, so who knows what this guy's capable of. For now though, I know when my chain's being yanked, alright? Pause. But until I see proof, I'm a skeptic of the zoo level. This urban legend turned glitch was a creepy mystery from the Misery Mire section of A Link to the Past. The rumor stated there were ghosts that haunted the swamp, but they were incredibly hard to see and wouldn't harm Link, but would always be around, watching. The only way to see these ghouls is to use the Bombos medallion, which will set the ghost on fire, with the fire being the only visible aspect of the figure. This can and will happen in the final game, and is actually a glitch that occurs where invisible entities known as Fireball Zora, which are enemies that are otherwise in the game but have no business being in the mire and are invisible. This seems to be either an oversight from developers overall, or was purposely left in the game and just changed invisible to save time. But either way, the final effect this glitch has on the game is definitely spooky, whichever way you run into it, whether it be setting these guys ablaze or just sticking your sword out and running forward. Here we are again, guys, with another nude female character cheat code rumor from the 90s this time. It was a different time. What can we say? Regardless of how poorly the whole nude raider thing aged, it was still one of the most prominent gaming urban legends in the 90s, so much so that developers started to troll the community because of it. The main way it was speculated to see Laura's goods would be to input a cheat code with one of the video game magazine publications, even putting an article on how to access the cheat code. This included getting a buddy and plugging in a second controller, slamming the sticks to the rhythm of Spice Girls tune Wannabe, and apparently when questioned why it was included, a spokesperson stated they weren't worried about anyone under 18 getting the code correctly, since they, quote, said, "We don't think anyone under 18 has the rhythm to access this mode." This really should have been the point most people took a step back and realized they're being duped, they're being trolled, they're being pranked. But since the article included images of what these cheat codes supposedly did, many players believed it. The rumor persisted so much so that the developers added a more risque scene in the ending of Tomb Raider 2 where Lara Croft will shoot the camera when it almost gets a peek at her in the shower. This clearly bothered developers as they stated their distaste with the over-sexualization of Lara, even stating, "Even during development, someone in management perhaps half-jokingly asked us for something similar and we told them to bog off," suggesting that they were being slightly pressured by management to include more lewd imagery with Lara. Shouts out to these developers for sticking to their guns, their moral code, and letting the dumb rumor of dirty youngins back in the day die out. Gamers predicting what's next in the line of console gaming is nothing new and has been around since video games started numbering their consoles. About halfway through a generation, talks of a new console will begin to float around with speculations on all aspects of the console, including design, specs, and most fun, the name. Perhaps one of the most well-known name predictions was the Xbox 360 sequel, which many figured would double the 360's number, making it Xbox 720. This didn't really make a whole lot of sense if you took a step back and considered that the actual reason 360 is named 360, it's a full circle. So what are we gonna do? We're just doing circles now? What are we getting ourselves dizzy here? This was a dumb name for a console, but a likely option, and man, I don't think anyone could have expected that Xbox would have went with Xbox One. And I'm still not sure which one of these is worse, to be honest. It's worth noting that the Xbox 720 was so commonly used as vernacular back in the day for the next Microsoft console, it was even used as a fake advertisement in the film Real Steel with Hugh Jackey. This was a tactic used to fill out a futuristic stadium fully equipped with futuristic advertisements, including the Xbox 720. If it were actually true, there wouldn't be any video game console advertisement up there because with the way the industry is going, I don't know if it'll still be around by the time we get to boxing robots. Portal's backstory and lore is already a lot deeper than the game presents, as we've seen thus far in this Iceberg, but it gets even darker as we start to dissect the main antagonist of the series, Glados, who's often been seen to resemble a woman being gagged and bound upside down. This rumor started based off a developer commentary in the game talking about the design of Glados, wanting her to be powerful yet also feminine, and this was before it was revealed that Glados was made up of Cave Johnson's assistant Caroline's consciousness. This rumor is still just speculation, with some darker rumors going around that voice actors refused to read certain lines as they related to sexual assault, and the game often being labeled as sexist as a whole because of this. Listen, I don't know about all that. I'm not here to say either or, but GLaDOS does clearly resemble either a bound woman upside down, or at the very least, as the developers have referenced themselves, this is a direct reference to the painting Birth of Venus. Regardless of what GLaDOS is, it's no surprise her story is one of tragedy, and it cements her as one of the best antagonists in a game to this date. You feel annoyed because of her constant monitoring and comments on your performance, but you also feel for her as her origin story is a very dark one. It's likely we won't ever see GLaDOS again, or even Portal again, because as we can recall, Valve takes their IPs out back and puts a 9mm to the backs of their heads when they reach sequel status. The Children of Goldshire are infamous for being a group of creepy-ass kids that can be spotted walking in a strange formation near Goldshire in World of Warcraft. The group is made up of 6 kids who have a scheduled walk that starts at 7 a.m. from their house in Goldshire, then they'll walk a path all the way to Stormwind City before walking back to their house about an hour later. If you follow the children into their house, they'll go up to the bedroom where you can hear some creepy-ass sounds like a banshee screaming, a strange ghoul call, and the character Thun saying, "You will die, and death is close." Not only that, but there is a couple of small skeletons and bones near the house in the backyard, making many players believe that these kids are actually ghosts or something even darker. Demons. Demon kids. That and the fact that when the children are doing their scheduled walks, the formation they take upon is the shape of a pentagram. Something that the developers would later deny, stating it was just the way they were programmed to follow the middle child, Cameron. Specifically, John Statz stated that the children were actually a reference to the Blizzard Dungeon team, with the names of the children relating to an employee on that team each. While this was just a silly secret that players took the wrong way, it's still a creepy small Easter egg that reminded many of the Children of the Corn, wherein this group of kids was a strange cult who were known to sacrifice others, hence the bones in the backyard. Who really knows, but I believe the John Statz explanation, because that's likely the only explanation we'll ever get, putting this mystery to rest. The shadow figures in single-player Gmod has been a strange mystery that has spooked many players who thought they were the only one in their server. Turns out they weren't. This phenomenon has been happening forever, and it seems to have weird popularity dips. Like in the past few years, there's been a lot of ARGs claiming that this guy does exist, but the urban legend goes further back than that. This is thought to happen on certain maps in the game and often startles players who aren't expecting another entity on these maps. There is an occurrence that can happen that reveals a shadow man by the name of Semper, who is a placeholder for the player character when the game is taken into third person. However, even with this this actually being in the game, people still claim to see shadow figures outside of this function, and with the nature of Gmod, the evidence for these can't be taken at face value because it's so easy to fake this in this game, specifically. If you look hard enough through, you can still find people claiming they've seen the Shadow Man in their single-player games, with most people calling them fake and seeking clout. I never played much of single-player Gmod. I usually just, loaded up some gunfights with my buddies, but I do know what it's like seeing something that is unexplainable and attempting to make the case that you're not crazy. So I feel for anyone who might have actually ran into this phenomenon naturally. Good luck trying to explain it though, right? And for these skeptics, just keep your head on a swivel the next time you load up Construct, okay? You never know, maybe that's the time the shadow will show up. The world of 9/11 urban legends and conspiracy is a crazy one, and it's so extensive it even delves into the video game universe a bit. There have been many examples of different pieces of media predicting the attacks on the Twin Towers on 9/11, like The Simpsons, but one of the strangest was the exclusion of the Twin Towers in the first Deus Ex game. They were apparently left out due to memory issues when rendering the city skyline, and they explained it with the fact that the towers fell due to a terrorist attack. The game was released in the year 2000, making for a pretty shut and closed case that they predicted 9/11, right? I mean, the buildings aren't there. Where'd they go? Well, if you're not aware, before the one that actually worked, there were other terrorist attempts to the Twin Towers, like the one in the 90s where a car bomb leveled a parking lot in the building, so this could be a reference to the attacks before the big one on 9/11. Regardless, it is pretty grim whether or not the developers were actually time travelers or not. I'm leaning more not. It just makes it seem like the buildings were never going to be safe and the disaster of 9/11 was inevitable. Sometimes life has a weird way of predicting itself, and I think that this coincidence in this incident is a prime example of that. It's not often that someone comes across the Reddits known as Tip of My Tongue and the video game equivalent Tip of My Joystick and not find an answer to their search, but this time it happened. These subreddits are meant to help people find the obscure things that they are thinking of without knowing the original name. Oftentimes, it'll be things like obscure songs you heard when you were a kid, but the particular post we're talking about for this entry was for a strange-sounding farming simulator game. A post by the title, "This game was kinda like Harvest Moon," made by Sparta213, was made to the Tip of My Joystick subreddit, where they'd inquire about a farming game where they remember hearing about a Harvest Moon type of game, but the twist was you murdered your wife, and you had to constantly evade the police by hiding her body anytime they stopped by your farm. They stated they remember it around 2015 and was pretty sure it wasn't a browser game, as a lot of people suggested that the strange concept was likely a result of an unknown Flash game that didn't exist anymore. However, the truth to the mystery was a lot more humorous than it had first seemed. It turns out that Sparta213 didn't in fact play this game because it never even existed. The fabrication of the game actually came from streamer Vinesauce Joel during an Earth Defense Force stream, where Joel can jokingly be heard talking about the premise of the game to a crazily accurate degree to what Sparta213 stated in their post.
All of the gameplay, you gotta hide a dead corpse. You know what? No, fuck. You know what it is? Harvest Moon. It's just regular Harvest Moon with your wife, and midway in the game, you have an argument with your wife, and you accidentally kill her.
After this was circulated, Sparta did respond and admitted that they used to watch and even fall asleep to Vinesauce Joel streams, and they must have confused the joke for a real game while falling asleep. It's crazy what the brain will do as you slip between conscious and unconscious. This guy just made a case for a crazy good farming simulator all by accident. Well, with the help of Joel, of course. At the end of it all, too, there is now a real evil farming game someone made based on the description that was given, which is available to play on Steam. Listen, I don't know if it's any good or if it holds up to the original description of the game, but to know a real game came out of this misinterpretation is really cool and something that doesn't happen often. In the early days of Fortnite, the rumors and myths were pretty tame and didn't involve who's the next superhero who's gonna get Fortniteified. Is it gonna be Danger Duck? You know? Who's next? Is it gonna be fucking Big Wheel? If you're not familiar, the llamas in Fortnite were loot boxes of sort that often gave the player rarer loot than if they were just looting the map. There were only 3 that can spawn during one match of the Battle Royale, and the rumor surrounded the fact that if you were able to get all 3 of the llama loot boxes in one game, you get a rare cosmetic prize known as the Bright Bag. Well, I need that Bright Bag. I'm addicted to Fortnite cosmetics. This was an extremely hard rumor to disprove, as the chances of getting all 3 llamas in a game is extremely rare and only happened once on video, where this player got extremely lucky to run into all 3, which spawned right near one another and hadn't been touched yet. This was finally able to disprove the theory once and for all, as the player only got a bunch of rare gun drops and loot and no bright bag, unfortunately. Very unfortunate. It's unlikely that Fortnite would have hidden a way to get free cosmetics, as that's their main way to make money with the game, so it's no wonder that this rumor turned out to be fake. It was pretty smart by whoever started the rumor to make it extremely hard to disprove. It reminds me of the impossible task of trying to unlock Toad in Melee. You know, you can't 100% say it's not possible if you can't do it. It's not often that fans are so desperate for Smash Bros. News that they start theorizing about possible assist trophies even. Not fighters, assist trophies. But during the demo pre-release phase of Smash Bros. 4 for Wii U and 3DS, that's exactly what happened, as those who got to play the game early started to claim that Chunky Kong from Donkey Kong 64 would make an appearance as an assist trophy. A few fake images leaked to help prove the myth, but after some time passed, most of the legit assist trophies had been confirmed, with still no confirmation of Chunky yet. Of course, it turns out that this was a hoax, and the original creator even came out to say that it was a hoax and described the reasoning was to expose other hoaxes, as he'd know it was fake if they included the Chunky Kong assist trophy. We'll come to find later in the Iceberg that this isn't a new strategy that publications and other people have practiced for a while to seek out fake news. Even though it was a hoax, it still introduced a super cool idea for an assist trophy that I'd personally like to see one day. Get some Donkey Kong 64 representation. The main move Chunky would perform would be a bang on the bottom of the screen, dropping large quantities of bananas to fall from the top of the screen, either to block the player's views or as projectiles for the player to dodge or something. I love me some Donkey Kong 64, as you guys know, and the characters exclusive to that game don't get a lot of limelight nowadays, so I'm all here for this. And hell, if we're dreaming, let's get all the Kongs in there as fighters, Lanky included. He'd be like a Min-Min with his fucking arms. That's crazy. If you don't know, Dream Daddy is a dating simulator in which you play as single dads looking for love with other dads, and like many other dating simulators, it has many branching paths with different options to see in the game. One of these endings was suspected to be in the game for a while, but was really hard to find and came to be known as the cult ending. This would have happened during Joseph's third date, or the last part of Joseph's path. This ending would have seen your character awake in a dungeon with Joseph standing over you, explaining that what's happening is real. It's no dream. It's revealed slowly that Joseph has been working to feed a greater entity and was the reason that there were so many single dads in the area, as he was the one sacrificing their past loved ones. It turns out that Joseph was swooning over the player in order to get the perfect sacrifice, but before Joseph can carry this out, Mire saves the day by stabbing Joseph and saving the main player. In the end, Joseph is supposedly arrested for embezzling church money with no further mention of the sacrifices, and the player then has a chance to start dating the investigator into Joseph's case. Man, this, yeah, didn't take any time to get over that one, did you? So yeah, the best way to get over almost being sacrificed to an ancient demon, you know, go have a little shake and bake at Saul's place and see where the night goes. The ending was initially cut from the final game before it was found by data miners in a working form. After this, the developers then came out and made a statement before making the mission available as an Easter egg and a full circle of finally getting to play out the darkest ending in the game. Scripulous Fingore was a rumored cut enemy that was featured in Mario games that went unnoticed by players for a long time. The few games the strange creature was supposedly featured in included New Super Mario Bros. DS, where he would seemingly appear in a ghost house in the game. Next, an image of the same creature can be seen where he seems to be from Super Mario 64 DS, with another image of the creature coming out online as recent as Super Mario Maker. The Scripulous Fingore is a large disembodied head with cartoonish eyes and one large hand with a protruding finger, hence the name Fingore. Of course, the entity is completely fake, having never shown up in any of these games, with lack of evidence that there were any entities that resembled these in these games' backends. The origin story behind the creature was pretty scarce online, with only a mention of any time Miyamoto was asked about the entity, he dodged the question and become visibly upset, which is, I mean, the guy is usually pretty jolly. He's a jolly good fella. Apparently this made him really upset. This shook him. Listen, to me it sounds like Mr. Shig had a little PTSD from his last doctor's visit, but that's just me, you know, you never know. This was initially made to be humorous with nothing particularly creepy about Scripulous, but some find the creature still a little bit unnerving, especially from the Super Mario 64 DS render, where the creature directly talks to Mario saying, "You cannot ignore me forever, Mario," alluding to the possibility that Fingore has always been following Mario around, and was never visible until now. Sheng Long is one of the most legendary and popular of the fighting game hoaxes of the early 90s. This originally started in Street Fighter II, where players misheard a victory phrase by Ryu, which really read as "You must defeat Sheng Long to stand a chance," referring to Ryu's famous move, the Shoryuken. Many players assumed that this was a reference to a secret boss that Ryu was referencing, stating, "Hey, go shape up with Sheng Long, then come back and let me kick your ass some more, cause you ain't nothing till you fight that old Long guy, huh?" If we were talking about Wukong, he might be right. That guy kicked my fucking ass. Rather, Ryu was stating you need to defeat his uppercut move to best him, but it was too much of a mistranslation and the rumors began going wild, ape, some might say. Much like Mortal Kombat rumors back in the day, the rumor that Sheng Long was a secret boss to fight and or a playable character started to pop up all around the internet. The myth got even more legs when known print journalism troll EGM decided to take the legend to another level. They developed 2 ads that revealed how to find and fight Sheng Long with methods including playing as Ryu and not taking a single hit until reaching M. Bison, where you would then have to survive 10 rounds by not attacking him, but also not letting him attack you. With this ridiculous task at hand, it was another nearly impossible task to disprove, and much like the earlier EGM hoaxes, they of course had images and photo evidence to help prove its legitimacy. Man, these guys were king trolls back in the day. They would again publish another article around the pre-release of Street Fighter 3 claiming once again that Sheng Long was in the game and how to get him this time with an easier task of only needing to get 6 perfect wins in a row. These were taken at face value a lot of times since the usual audience seeing these were kids, so these articles only served to spread the rumor even further to the point where even Capcom started to notice. Capcom would slowly start to make more references to the character in public-facing interviews, but it wasn't until very recently with the release of Street Fighter 6 that players would finally be able to fight Sheng Long, in a fashion. During the World Tour, players can find Sheng Long during the Fighty Mighty side mission, where you end up finally going mano-a-mano with the legend himself. Fittingly, he is also one of the hardest opponents in the World Tour mode, living up to the rumors of his insanely difficult moveset to go against. To be fair, it appears they made him with the custom character creator in the game, and while it does look like Sheng Long, he also looks a little bit busted. I mean, you can't really help it. I mean, I'm sure this is the best they could have done with a character creator that also lets you make something like this, but still, it is a bit bittersweet that this is when we finally get to fight the legend himself. And it's just kind of, it's like a balloon deflating, you know? Damn. There hasn't been a more intimidating final Smash boss than Master Hand in my opinion, and he still sticks out to me as to be one of the most simplest designs while also being weirdly expressive. The idea of playing as Master Hand has been around since the N64 version, but it wasn't until a glitch was discovered in Melee that this could actually come to fruition in a way. The glitch was done by making the game think you didn't select a fighter, defaulting to a default character 1A, which is Master Hand actually. To pull this off, you need to plug at least 3 controllers in and execute the glitch with the 3rd controller, and if done right, the 3rd player will start the match as Master Hand. He is pretty limited as he doesn't move around on his own and can only move around the match by attacking, so good luck with that. If you do end up winning as Master Hand, the game will crash as well, seeing as there is no programmed victory screen for him. This was a far cry from what we actually wanted from playing Master Hand back in the day, but it was good enough. It wouldn't be until the release of the World of Light mode in Smash Bros. Ultimate where players would officially play as Master Hand in a special match. It's not clear if this was already an idea floating around the development office or if this was inspired by the old glitch, but regardless, it's a really cool prospect to finally play as one of the coolest antagonists in the series. It's surprising we don't see more urban legends surrounding racing characters in video games, but I guess the characters matter less in racing games than fighting games. Still though, even with that in mind, there are still a few infamous urban legends that tell of secret unlockable racers from legendary kart racer games. Crash Team Racing was one of these racing games that had a rumor that you can unlock and race as the main antagonist of the game, Nitrous Oxide. Initially, this started out as your typical secret character unlock myth that asked the player to do a ridiculous number of things to unlock the character, of which you needed to collect all of the game's platinum relics, defeating Nitrous Oxide in the race against them, defeating all of the end trophy ghosts in a specific order, defeating all of the Nitrous Oxide ghosts in a specific order, and finally entering the code right circle triangle left down circle triangle left while holding both the L1 and R1 buttons on the game's menu. This wouldn't net any unlock, and like many other myths, this was just a way to troll players and waste their time. I mean, I wasted plenty of time just trying to fucking spell that code out. It wasn't until someone began to mod the game with a Game Shark device that they were actually able to swap out a racer for Nitrous Oxide, finally allowing players to play as this Squidward wannabe. To be fair, this method wouldn't work on every map and was known to crash the game at different intervals, so it's pretty unreliable, but still possible. Luckily, when the game's remake came out, they added Nitrous Oxide to the roster as a playable character and even cashed in on this urban legend and offered him up for immediate use if you pre-ordered the game. Gotta love whack-ass pre-order bonuses like this, man. Oh, you don't want to play the game to unlock this content? Get it free for now, and you don't have to play the game, the one you just bought and pre-ordered. It's ass backwards. The Golden Warthog was a prominent rumor in Halo 2 back in the day and spawned from a number of advertisements and billboards that showed a unique yellow-colored warthog for sale. This was quickly deemed the Golden Warthog, and players started to investigate to see if there was one actually in the game or not. Like other urban legends up until this point, there is a crazy convoluted way to get to where the Golden Warthog was supposedly hiding that involved crazy rocket jumping and precise aiming. Of course, this turned out to be a hoax, and after delving into the game's files, it was revealed that the Golden Warthog doesn't exist within the game and was a simple advertisement within the game, probably just to fill the background, let's be honest. However, the developers did add a version of the Golden Warthog to the Halo 2 Collector's Edition remake that could be found in the Forge and multiplayer, finally bringing this decades-old rumor to a rest. One of the most iconic Mario Kart tracks, in my opinion, is Bowser's Castle, which is one of the most filled out Mario Kart 64 tracks, fit with everything you'd expect to find in your typical Bowser's Castle, just converted into a racetrack. Sure, you know, you could argue today's Bowser Castle tracks are more impressive and more of a spectacle, but there's a certain feeling of claustrophobia and dread that I don't really get with any of these new tracks. One of the creepiest parts of the level for me as a kid that stuck out was the green thwomp held behind the bars in the entrance hall. He is the only thwomp secluded away from the others, and his green tint always made him stick out even more to me, and apparently to others. This guy's name is Marty, as he was nicknamed by fans, and he is a special thwomp that is, for an unknown reason, held behind bars. If you drive up to Marty, he will grimace or smile at the player, and that is kind of all he does. Marty sticks out like a sore thumb, so much so that people started to speculate that he was an unlockable racer with a number of theories on how to unlock him. A regular L is real. It's worth noting that even though Marty appears green in the cage, he isn't actually any different from any of the other thwomps in the castle, and it's just the lighting in the cage giving him this, his nuclear tint, you know? Nuclear. I say it like George W. Nuclear. This can be seen best when the level was brought back in Mario Kart Wii, where they changed the lighting in the cage, making him appear as a normal thwomp. Even though the theories of Marty being unlockable in Mario Kart 64 were false, there are mods out there where you can port a newer version of Marty into Mario Kart 8, and it looks really sick. I love the modding community and their capabilities of bringing dumbass 90s kids' imaginative ideas to life. Berserk and Frenzy were your typical arcade games straight out of the 80s and featured gameplay where you played as an unnamed character going around fighting robots. Classic. The game doesn't seem like it's all that impressive nowadays, but the game has stuck out against others due to its eerie enemy known as Evil Otto and the urban legends surrounding this Walmart logo of a video game enemy. Evil Otto was the center of a bunch of urban legends in the early internet that told of a curse that came from the game and losing to Evil Otto. It said that he would inflict inflict heart issues upon the players, and this came from a story of a kid who lost his life while playing the machine and suffered from a heart condition. This was enough fuel to start a wildfire of conspiracies, and after that, even more unconfirmed deaths started to pop up, launching the game into internet infamy. These claims of several people dying at the hands of Evil Otto is just plain false, but it is a bit more of a fleshed out legend than that of Polybius, since the game actually did exist. And I gotta say, I don't think my heart's gonna explode, but there is something kind of unnerving about Evil Otto, especially when he enters the screen and starts shouting, "Intruder alert!"
Intruder alert, humanoid, intruder.
It's pretty unsettling, but again, I don't think the Dollar General balloon was able to take anybody's life from beyond an arcade machine screen. That kid had previous issues and he was going for a world record, I'm pretty sure. GoldenEye, like other Rare games, was known to have cut content that didn't make it into the final game, most infamously the other cut James Bond characters. GoldenEye, upon release, featured only Pierce Brosnan's Bond, but there were quickly many rumors that the other Bonds up until that point in the films were also unlockable and playable in the game. Our good old friends, they're back, right? Electronic Gaming Monthly, good old EGM. They played into this urban legend with their yearly April Fool's joke articles, showing how to unlock the character screen, and of course, in typical EGM fashion, the requirements to unlock them were damn near impossible. They also included supposedly non-doctored in-game images showing all the Bonds on the screen at once, plus a pretty convincing character select screen with each of the Bonds present. This did nothing but extend the life expectancy of this rumor until finally it was confirmed by Rare developers themselves that there were plans to have all the James Bonds throughout the years playable, but were removed last minute before the game's final release. While they don't pinpoint a very specific reason, they do hint at the fact that they didn't have licensing for these other actors' likenesses in the game, and in the interest of not getting sued by these guys, they don't appear in the final game. At this point, they need to make a GoldenEye Ultimate where you can play as every James Bond and James Bond villain in the series thus far. Imagine Anton Chigurh. I know that's not his name but the same actor yeah, you get it. Hey You Pikachu was a game that was pretty ahead of its time, featuring Tamagotchi-like gameplay with a pet Pikachu. Here you could interact with Pikachu directly, with a large way to do this being a VRU, which was a microphone with a large 256-word database that would be picked up and registered in-game. Hey You Pikachu is one of the only two games to use this strange attachment for the N64, and was by far the most popular of the two. Even with the extra attachment as part of the bundle, it still sold well over 1 million units, which was pretty surprising. With the VRU attachment, you could directly communicate with Pikachu, where he would respond in a number of ways, with some reactions being negative, where Pikachu would become visibly upset. There was a rumor for a while that the words Sony and PlayStation were programmed into the VRU to specifically elicit a negative response from Pikachu when these were said by the player. This was believed to be a cheeky way for Nintendo to stoke the console war fires of yesteryears, but it turns out just to be a coincidence where the words Sony and PlayStation just so happened to sound like other words in the VRU database, eliciting Pikachu's negative response. Honestly though, if they remade this, my headcanon would be that Pikachu is like everyone else in 2024 and definitely hates Sony for becoming what they hated, a monopoly at the top of the industry before they destroy themselves like they did with the PS3. Now that's a real reason to hate Sony, and I gotta say, I got permanent Pikachu face anytime Sony makes a move in the industry nowadays. Much like the purple Guy animatronic rumors from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the Balloon Boy from the same game was thought to have an animatronic version in the game as well. This rumor's origins started based on a video that was uploaded in 2015 that supposedly showed a dark version of the Balloon Boy that would be really hard to see in the dark atmosphere of the game, with only his creepy ass eyes and smile being visible. This was also apparently only able to be seen in the mobile version of FNAF 2, which makes the mystery even more obscure. Of course, the theory and the evidence was all proven fake, with no Shadow Balloon Boy being added to the series since. I feel like the design of Shadow Balloon Boy would benefit some of the darker environments in the series, especially since you won't be able to see him until the last minute, making it even more intense. Better yet, probably good he was never in the final FNAF 2 game. You know, that Night 6 is apparently already impossible enough. Yoshi's Story, while not as popular as its predecessor, Yoshi's Island, was still a great game and a hidden gem on the N64. Unlike in Super Mario World 2, you're not escorting Baby Mario, but rather he's absent with you just playing as a slew of Yoshis, with each color acting as the player's lives. In the base game, when you start it up, you only have 6 Yoshi color variants to choose from, with 2 more being unlockable that include black and white Yoshis. While this seems like plenty of Yoshis to go around for how long the game is, there were rumors of another Yoshi being unlockable in the game, which started the purple Yoshi rumor in Yoshi's Story. According to a lot of game guide websites back in the day, the way to unlock a unique color of Yoshi is to collect every single coin in the game, which sounds easier than it actually is, seeing as the game is broken up into paths requiring multiple playthroughs. The rumor was actually believed to be true due to the supporting evidence of an image that came from the beta that shows 2 Yoshi colors, both purple and brown, which obviously didn't make it into the final game, but were at some point planned for the game. Not only this, but in the storybook opening for the game, the pink Yoshi appeared more purple than pink due to the lighting of this section, making players believe that these were hints at the secret Yoshi being unlockable somewhere. However, even to this day, there has been no word of purple Yoshi being found, and if he hasn't been found in the game's files beyond leftovers from the beta, then it's likely he's just a myth. The urban legends and wild-ass theories didn't just stop at Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto series, as fans of the Bully series had some of their own theories as to some of the stuff happening in Bullsworth. A common theory seen online is the existence of werewolves in the game, and nailing down if they exist, and if they do, is there someone in the game who is secretly transforming when Jimmy isn't with them. This rumor started based on a lot of context clues you could find throughout Bullworth, with things like strange x-rays showing a human-like creature with extra stuff going on. Not really sure, but it's definitely not, that's no human. Not only this, but in the insane asylum, the patient's attacks mimic that of a werewolf type of creature, with patients hunching over and jumping on the player, biting them and scratching. This has led many to believe the werewolf must be one of the patients at the asylum, but many also disagree, saying that it's someone much closer to Jimmy's front doorstep, that being Gary Smith. This rumor was mainly started based on the fact the werewolf mask Jimmy can find in the game shares a similar scar down the right eye as Gary has in the game, leading many to believe that at the best Gary is dressing up as a werewolf and got fucked up bad by somebody having a bad night, or at worst Jimmy is wearing a real wolf's face skinned in these scenes. This rumor quickly fell apart after close inspection to the scars on both the werewolf and Gary don't actually match up all that well. There are other theories into the werewolf that terrorizes Bullworth, but nothing concrete has come up yet, but who knows, we're dealing with Rockstar here. If you want to see more about Bully's mysteries and Easter eggs, I highly recommend checking out Nathan NS, who focuses on covering Bully's stranger sides and is really informative while he does it. A great channel and one I use as a resource often when I'm looking at Bully content, so go check him out. If I know anything from finally playing through Bloodborne this past summer and still failing to make it through Elden Ring, I know that this Miyazaki guy is a class act fucking troll. Like, he doesn't even really try to hide it nowadays, but back in the first Dark Souls, it was a little bit less on the nose. In most Souls games, you get a starting item ranging from super useful for new players to items that can save you some money later on, but there was a pendant in the first Dark Souls that trolled an entire community for way too long, and it might still be working to this day to any newcomers to the game. The pendant starting gift simply states in its description, reading, "A simple pendant with no effect. Even so, pleasant memories are crucial to survive on arduous journeys." With how deep some of the mysteries in Souls games go, this seems like it has every reason to be something important, even if just for one part of the game much later on. This led many players to start hitting the forums asking if anyone ever found any use of the pendant, to which there wasn't a lot of response. The pendant is tradable, but for a pretty useless item, and otherwise its description states it does absolutely nothing. I do like the pleasant memories part, as it adds an extra layer into the role-playing part of the game, as even though the pendant doesn't have any buffing effects to your character, if you were truly given a choice of these items in real life and a pendant of your loved ones was a choice, it might be a harder one to make. It's weirdly wholesome in a way, but still, fuck Miyazaki for all his trickery, even something as small as this little starting item here. He also played into the rumor and added a lot more fuel when he was asked personally what his starting gift he'd take in Dark Souls 1, and he simply stated he'd take the pendant or nothing. And what can we say? He's a sentimental, tender-hearted fella, that Miyazaki, you know? If you were one of the earliest adopters of Ocarina of Time, you likely had a much more terrifying experience in the Fire Temple than people who got the game after the first couple of iterations hit the market. If you're not familiar, the music in Ocarina's Fire Temple was changed due to the inclusion of these eerie Muslim chants, although they weren't cut due to the spine-chilling atmosphere they create, but rather due to Nintendo overlooking the chants and going back to remove them to avoid including real-life religion in a Nintendo game. A pretty strict rule they follow over there at Nintendo. The chants actually originally came from a pack of sound effects that was commonly used for video games, with other games even sharing the same chants from the original Fire Temple, including the Egypt level in Cairo Cruisin'. The main rumor that came from this was the initial reasoning for Nintendo's decision to remove the chants, which was first thought to be a response from backlash of the Muslim community, but this was never confirmed and is mostly believed to be a myth. This is because of correspondence in the past with Nintendo employees who have stated they realized the chants were in the game before any backlash came their way and prematurely removed it. I've seen the sentiment online a lot that many prefer the atmosphere the original adds to the level, and I can definitely say it's a lot more stressful to play this version of the Fire Temple. What do you guys think? Which one do you prefer, chants or chantless? Mr. Mix was an early creepypasta that I remember actually freaking me out a little bit when I first ran across it back in the day. It tells of a gamer who is recollecting and inquiring about an old PC typing game by the name of Mr. Mix. The goal of the game was like any other typing game where you had to type whatever words you saw on the screen, and this would then cause Mr. Mix to begin adding ingredients to the bowl with each successful word typed. The goal of the game was very simple, but the author makes it a point to say the difficulty curve was insane, with the WPM metric increasing with every level. In level 1, it's an easily achievable 10 words a minute, but by level 5, you're up to 500 words a minute, impossible for anyone who isn't that robot from iRobot who did that cool little sketch. I always like that scene. Since the 5th level was so difficult to get through, the game was never completed and thus fell into obscurity. That was the case until apparently the ROM was dumped online, where hackers were able to get into the back end to see what lies beyond level 5. From here, the story goes into your typical creepypasta tropes like the game crashing your whole computer, body horror, and of course a surprise guest appearance from a real-life Mr. Mix. For back in the day, the story really wasn't all that bad, and while it was hard to believe, it was a unique take on a video game cursing its users. Maybe it's more just to me that Mr. Mix is a really original idea and would work great today as an indie typing horror game or something. But yeah, Mr. Mix doesn't exist and he can't hurt you, don't worry. As we've seen thus far, these rumors and urban legends rarely turn out to be true, and if they are, it's likely the result of a glitch and not actual content from the final game. However, that changes with this entry focused around a side area in Final Fantasy IX, wherein players hadn't found the content for over a decade after the game was released. This originally started to circulate online after a player took to the GameFAQs forums to discuss a secret mission he hadn't seen before or seen mentioned online by anyone else, and he had found it in a Japanese game guide for the game. They included clear instructions on how to access the area, and the instructions to keep progressing through it were really strangely convoluted. I've never played the game personally, but what I've got from this is that you basically have to constantly come and go from a certain area after each boss, which is not a natural sequence in any other part of the game, and there's no real reason anyone would think to do that. Even though the setup for this rumor was like every other fake one we've covered thus far, this one surprisingly turned out to be true, and the fact it was unknown for so long shocked some people. It still shocks some people today. I'm shocked. This was purely due to a number of factors, including shoddy English versions of the game guides, which oddly excluded the side mission, along with the fact that the internet wasn't as popular as it is nowadays to rely on looking up information for games, and it got to a point where nobody really knew to even look for it. It's crazy this went unnoticed for so long, and I feel like something like this couldn't happen today because of how dissective everyone plays games nowadays. That and the constant digging through the game's back ends, there's no real hiding from these guys anymore. Luna Game is a series of games made alongside a creepypasta series that focused on the My Little Pony series and the character Luna. These are very simple platformers that would usually end in a Sonic.exe kind of way, where they would crash, often showing shock images along with stuff like this. Thanks to the low production of the games, the developer was able to make quite a few of these games, which are all playable for anyone who is a fan of My Little Pony and also early 2010s video game creepypastas. And I feel like that Venn diagram is almost a damn circle, to be honest. And hey, no judgments, just observations over here. But yeah, there's not much more to say about this one because while the creepypasta itself is in the fiction realm, the very real games are still there to play and provide evidence to these stories. So in a way, this one is real, but also partially not, because they're not actually going to kill you. The ponies aren't going to kill you. It's not often that the name of a boss or enemy is the subject of mystery and rumor, but that's exactly what happened during the pre-release for the remake of Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, in which a tweet was made claiming to be an official source that stated that Bowser in the game would be named Godslayer Bowser in the Japanese version. While this is definitely a fitting name due to his size, this just wasn't true, and in Japanese pre-release he was denoted as Fury Koopa, of course Koopa standing for Bowser. I gotta say though, Godslayer Bowser has a certain edgy ring to it that I mess with. It sounds like he's ready to show Godzilla who's the best giant reptile in Japan. Now that's something I'd want to see. I'd rather watch all those than these mid-ass Godzilla movies we're getting in the States as of late. Well, besides Godzilla -1, that is. That shit was amazing. During the early pre-release circuit of Luigi's Mansion, many excited fans accidentally mistook the game to be beaten in under 24 hours, kind of similar to how Pikmin works with its day cycle. This mainly spawned from a misinterpretation from the trailer for the game that states Luigi has one night to save Mario, which many took to mean that you needed to beat the game in a day's time. However, this more meant that the game took place all in one night in terms of the story and not time restrictions placed on the players. Another supporting piece of evidence came from the gameplay beta footage that was playable at E3 2001 that showed a pretty different Luigi's Mansion to the one we know. One of the most noticeable changes was the timer located in the bottom right corner that was constantly ticking down, which many took to mean this timer would be constantly counting down during gameplay for a full 24 hours. However, this is just a simple way of limiting attendees' playtime so more people could experience the game waiting in line. I don't know what a Luigi's Mansion with the worry of a time limit would look like, but since it works so well in Pikmin, I'm not counting this idea out yet. Maybe an idea to play around with in Luigi's Mansion 4. You know, gotta reinvent the formula sometimes, and I think it's time for something to change with the Luigi's Mansion formula. It's becoming been there, done that pretty quickly here. GoldenEye had a few more strange mysteries than just the unlockable bonds, and one of the more popular ones told of a secret level located in the game simply called Citadel. It's not known when or who started the rumor, but at some point after the game's release, a rumor started to spread of a missing level within the game, but no one had any idea how to find it. That was until hacker sleuths were able to hack the game using GameShark, in which they were able to replace a level that is able to be loaded in the game with a visibly unfinished new level. This so happens to be the remnants of the suspected Citadel level, which turns out to be a cut level from the final game and appears as more of a test map than a final level. But it could just mean they decided to cut the level early into its development. Not much is known as to why the level was cut, but it seems like the Citadel wouldn't have played any major role in the story and was likely a bonus stage or an extra stage at the end of the game. The Citadel likely wouldn't have tipped the scales for the game's popularity in either direction, but hey, more multiplayer maps the better, and nowadays, you know, beggars can't be choosers. Test Zero is an urban legend surrounding a game that already houses quite a few myths. Final Fantasy VII. We're back. This was a supposed fight that most missed in the game with a specific enemy that can't be found anywhere else in the game. The battle supposedly takes place with a small black dog-like creature named Test Zero. The origins of this mysterious enemy encounter started in the unofficial strategy guide for the game by publisher Versus Books, where they mentioned a secret enemy to fight that is only available in the Japanese version of the game. Apparently in the Japanese version, if you climb down the well in the beginning of the Corel prison, this would would give the player a slight chance of triggering this hidden fight. And this turns out to be true and is exclusive to the Japanese release of the game, but instead of being a cut fight, it seems to be more of a testing fight that was accidentally left in the game. This is because the Test Zero enemy doesn't attack the player and has a substantial amount of health. While it's extremely hard to trigger the fight, it is possible in the final Japanese release of Final Fantasy VII, and it became so infamous that the developers brought back a reference to this developer error by bringing a real Test Zero fight to the remake of the game, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Listen, this time though, he isn't some just test subject and is actually ready to fight back. Get ready. This is a really cool Easter egg and makes me wish more developers acknowledged their mistakes like this and made references to them. They even added some explanation when you access Test Zero, where it states the oversight of a Shinra developer let this creature out, which is a direct reference to the oversight from the original Test Zero encounter. Team Fortress 2 is a classic in all regards and paved the way for modern-day hero shooters, for the better or for the worse. This player base is so dedicated that they're still awaiting updates to the game, like the mysterious 10th class that was rumored for a while back in the day. Of course, no major updates like this will show up in the game, as Valve, besides small updates, doesn't seem to have major plans for large content updates for the game. And it's fair, the game is over a decade old at this point. Persistent players still hold out hope for this mysterious 10th player class to make it into the game one day, with the main candidate being a class from Team Fortress 1 known as the Civilian class. This class is actually in Team Fortress 2's backend, but is very limited, even lacking its own unique player model using that of the Scout. There was a rumor out there that the 10th class was to come in the way of a Guard Dog class, wherein fans of the game released a fake update titled the Guard Dog Update. This was even referenced by Valve themselves, where they responded in the Team Fortress 2 universe, with this contract of sorts being posted to their website. While there were talks from the developers about adding a 10th class at points in the game's popularity, it was eventually decided that any good ideas that would make up a good unique character class would be better used for the subclasses of the classes they already have in the game. So for that sake, and the fact the game is so old at this point, I doubt we'll ever see the 10th spot get filled. And at this point, wouldn't that mess with the meta too much? I don't know, I played Team Fortress 2 a handful of times and I never jived with it, so let me know what you guys think. Would a 10th class fuck it up at this point, or are you guys just ready for something? You're at the faucet waiting for a little bit of something, a little bit of content to drip out of that fucking rusty old piece of shit. Far Cry 5 is a game with a lot of oddities, and considering it deals with cultists, I'd say it's to kind of be expected. With themes like hallucinatory drugs, nuclear warfare, and rednecks, there's a lot to see in the world of Far Cry 5, including a few harder to find Easter eggs. The static torture station sounds like an area in a Tarkov map to me, but this is actually referencing a radio station the player can tune into and hear a pretty strange message from. If you're driving in the northern parts of the map, you can sometimes hear a staticky channel on the radio that will sometimes push through moans and screams to the player. Here's a bit of the audio that's played. I've covered this entry before, probably the last time I covered this Iceberg, and back then I was making the case that this Easter egg is actually spooky and out of place for the game since there was really no explanation for it. And yeah, while it is mysterious and a little creepy, I saw a few comments state that this isn't super unexpected in this world. I mean, you could be driving down the road and hear the dying screams of someone getting maimed by a mountain lion, but the static radio station is supposed to be a little creepy and weird. So yeah, while this is real, I don't think it has all that much to explain, and is probably just a creepy reference to let players not forget where they're at, where they're stuck, even during calmer parts of the game like driving around. Much like the idea that you could revive Aerith from Final Fantasy VII, another popular rumor was floating around online that General Leo's death in Final Fantasy VI wasn't all it was made out to be. For many players, the death of General Leo came out of nowhere and really impacted them to the point that players started the ridiculous rumor circuit where you have to do ridiculous tasks to get him back. But in reality, he was actually able to be obtained. This wasn't included on purpose by developers, but it is a sequence-breaking glitch players can pull off to make the game think that General Leo is still in your party, even replacing the character Banon. The glitch is known as the airship glitch, as it pertains to the sequence breaking by dying and reloading a save after obtaining access to the airship. Even though this is pretty much a foolproof way to rewrite the game's story and keep Leo in your party, it only works up to a certain point in the game where General Leo will suddenly just disappear from your party. The only other way to obtain General Leo is through GameShark codes replacing existing player models with that of General Leo, so it's not impossible to use this to cope with Leo's death, but it's probably best to just accept and grieve effectively. How you gonna react if Grand goes, "There's no airship glitch to get that old bag back"? Kakarot is a supposedly real Sega Genesis game that also released for other consoles including MS-DOS, NES, and the Game Boy. This was a very rare and obscure game to find even during its initial release in 1993, where it was said to be found in bargain bin stores like Dollar Generals and the like. The legitimacy of Kakarot is called into question with a lack of evidence besides images of the supposed box art floating around out there, which shows Kakarot who looks more like a kid's first foray into character design using Scratch than a Sega Genesis character. But that's him, that's the big man. The original creator of Kakarot has come forward and identified themselves and stated it was indeed fake, including a brand new animation of Kakarot as evidence. It seems like this is the end of the Kakarot urban legend for now, but its popularity has spawned some fan games to come out that would capture what they assume Kakarot might have been if it had been a real video game. Overall, this one is one of the more grounded in reality ARGs, I guess if you could even call it that, with not a whole lot of information given from the original creator. It seems like a cool experiment to pull off if you have an old project assets you don't have anything else to do with. Kirby Red Diamond sounds more like a Pokemon game than a Kirby game, and that's for good reason. It's not really a Kirby game. Kirby Red Diamond was once thought to be a super obscure Game Boy Advance Kirby game that was a completely original release that fell by the wayside. This all started after fans started to notice copies of Kirby by the title of Kirby Red Diamond that would be listed on auction sites like eBay with this image of the box art. When the seller was inquired about the game, the listings would be quickly taken down, which was the first red flag that something was amiss. After more and more of these listings were noticed and went missing days later, Nintendo themselves were contacted about the game, who responded it is indeed a bootleg, as they'd never developed a game called Kirby Red Diamond. And with a sick-ass name like that, they'd remember if they had, okay? It wasn't until the listing showed up again on Yahoo Auctions, which is hilarious. I didn't even know that existed. There, someone was able to buy a copy and share it with the world. As it turns out, the game is nothing more than a cheap, shoddy bootleg of the first Kirby's Adventure on NES ported to Game Boy Advance, and it was one of these obviously bootleg versions of these games that actually put some effort into making them seem like the real product. This was further backed up by the fact that the game supposedly started showing up around the time of the release of Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for Game Boy Advance, which was a remake of the NES Kirby's Adventure, so perhaps the creator of the bootleg thought they could slide this by people since it was technically the same game. Apparently on the title screen when you load it up it says Red Diamond Kibby's Star. Hey, who the fuck's Kibby? The ports of Mortal Kombat from the arcades were never going to capture that initial magic of first walking into an arcade and playing Mortal Kombat for the first time. Turns out there is also some superiority when it comes to which one to play on console, with things like controls and mainly visuals were changed depending on which one you got. The worst by far was the Super Nintendo version, which first and foremost the game quote controlled like a wet towel in a tornado. Another major exemption from the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat was the lack of blood, which is like taking Yoshi out of Yoshi's Island. It's the whole fucking thing. Kids in the arcades in the 80s weren't excited because they got to fight a shirtless ninja with a guy with a giant hat. It was the gore they were after, and without the blood, the game really feels like a shell of itself. This exclusion spawned many rumors from unhappy fans who felt ripped off by this, that there was a secret blood code in the game that would allow players to turn the blood effects back on. The base game simply palette swapped the blood effects to resemble sweat, but to me it seems like these fellers are beating the literal semen out of each other, but that's just me. Unfortunately though, there was no such code amongst the many cheat codes in the Super Nintendo game, and that was just the start of fans realizing just how square Nintendo is and was. The prospect of making it to the top of the castle in Super Mario 64 with or without the 120 stars was already enough of a daunting task to the point where I remember not believing that Yoshi was even up there. This must have been when I was really young, and I remember being blown away the first time I saw him and all his janky glory. Jesus, he's never looked worse. Like many, I was ready to hop aboard and explore the game with my newly obtained toy, but alas, only disappointment filled my heart. This was many players' experience after going through the arduous task of 100%ing the game. You would want a better prize than maxing out your lives and getting a what's up from your pet. The disappointment was immeasurable to the point where rumors began to crop up of a way to ride Yoshi, but no rumors ever worked. After data miners went through the game's backend, they found an animation for a Yoshi egg that initially suggested that maybe Yoshi was gonna end up being rideable, or at least play a bigger role in the game than standing there looking like a fucking bozo. It seems like this isn't even the case though, as the file is named Bird Egg, which shares the same name as Hoot's file, meaning this was likely an early way for Hoot to spawn in the game rather than coming out of the tree he'd hatch. And this was likely cut so early that they didn't even change the texture of the egg from a Yoshi egg. Luckily though, in the remake they would allow us to actually play as Yoshi and a couple other dopes, but for fans of the original game, this one still stings even today. The Running Man is a legendary side character that appears in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and maybe even other Nintendo games, but I won't tell. In Ocarina of Time, you can find the Running Man pumping out laps around the Hyrule field where you can actually race him. While you can beat the record time, you can't actually beat the Running Man himself, as they've made him impossible to win against in the final game. This caused a lot of tryhards and skeptics to take to the gym and the treadmills to find out if they could actually beat the Running Man naturally. However, no matter what time you hit in the race, the Running Man will always finish at least a second before the player. Through hacking, you can surely smoke this guy in the blink of an eye, right? By equipping turbo speed, or hell, just teleporting to the finish line. Wrong, dumbass. Since there is no programmed victory for the Running Man, somehow he still beats the player in the race, making no matter what you try, this guy will always beat your ass. This is obviously some payback for smoking Koopa the Quick for all those years, man. The real reason there is no victory programmed in apparently is because the developers couldn't think of a good prize, so they left the ability to win completely out of the game, making for one of the most frustrating ends to an urban legend thus far in the Iceberg. You win this one, Running Man, but if I ever see you dressed up like a piano somewhere, you better watch your back, buddy. Kanye Quest 3030 was an indie RPG that was popularized due to its unique take on a role-playing game and its many references to current artists of the time and past. The game seemed like a typical independent game made in RPG Maker, and for a while, it was just that. That was until a player took to the forums in hopes to help out with a secret area they had found within the game. During a section of the game, a lady will ask Kanye what he wants, and by typing in Ascension, you will be teleported to a new area in the game, in which the game informs you that you were just playing a front for the experience you were about to play out now. This was extremely strange, but it did indeed change to a completely new game where you flew around a giant pyramid level as a butterfly with several computer terminals inside. These terminals all contain passwords, which after each correct answer you would ascend to another level of the pyramid itself. The puzzles were hard to solve, so hard that it wasn't until data miners dug up the real passwords that the final part of this mystery was revealed. The game would finally end with a text box asking the player if they'd like to continue on, and prompts for personal information would pop up as the game was gathering players' information for unknown reasons. This was initially thought to be an initiation process for an estranged cult that did its recruiting through strange rapper-inspired RPGs, but in reality this wasn't the case at all. The players' responses actually had no way of storing themselves in the game, meaning no information was actually being exchanged, hence why those attempted to share their information were never actually contacted by anyone. For a long time, it was thought that this mystery would never actually be solved. That is until through a slew of strange events, the original creator was found, who then did an interview and revealed that Kanye Quest was made for a class project in the side area that shook the whole internet, wasn't actually intended to be anything other than an Easter egg to the developer's original game. So in the end, all of the hype around the cult theories fell apart pretty quickly, and the mystery is finally put to rest. If you want to see a more in-depth analysis on this crazy-ass urban legend, I highly recommend checking out Chill Fuel's video on it, which has the most up-to-date information relating to this urban legend. The Bella Goth mystery from the Sims series is still one of the most intriguing and confusing mysteries surrounding a video game in the recent years. If you're unfamiliar, a fan favorite Sim from the Sims 1 named Bella Goth seemingly goes missing in between the timeline of Sims 1 to Sims 2, causing fans to panic and immediately start investigating further into the mystery. The developers purposely spoon-fed information about Bella Goth's disappearance in a number of ways until it was completely left up to the internet to finish the mystery. Although there are a lot of theories that hold a lot of weight, the most likely theory was what Game Theory found out in their video covering the mystery. It seems the most likely theory was that Bella Goth was abducted by aliens and subsequently sent to the past in order for these aliens to carry out their grand plan. In these Sims, you're able to see family trees in which there was a family that spawned from an alien all the way at the beginning, and this abduction most likely results from a member of this family, with the motives of these Sims being the most likely to want Bella gone. All of the evidence directly points to the Caliente sisters being the main culprits in attempts to wed and gold dig her husband, seeing him as a big name in The Sims, helping to find the main town in the first 2 Sims games. There's a lot more about this mystery that I left out for the sake of time, but if you'd like to know more, I highly recommend checking out the Game Theory for the mystery, as it has the most probable solution to this over a decade-old mystery. G-Man is one of the most elusive and mysterious antagonists the world has seen in terms of video games. He serves as the main villain in the Half-Life series, and his origins and identity is still heavily discussed and theorized, with a clear answer still not being out there even today. While there is no definitive answer to who G-Man actually is, there are some theories that are pretty meta and very interesting. One of the most popular theories is the employers of G-Man, which is a theme mentioned in the Half-Life games pertaining to G-Man, which many fans have taken to literally mean his employer's Valve, and it's a meta take on his purpose in the game, serving out as a villain in a video game solely because his employer's Valve told him to, because they needed a villain. We also know that G-Man isn't actually a human, but this is just a form of G-Man who is actually an interdimensional being, with many speculating we can't even comprehend his true form. Till we get a true continuation into the series with Half-Life 3, this mystery will still likely remain unsolved. Just know this guy is something you don't want to mess with. He's even intimidating in Gmod, where I can do literally anything I want to him. Alright, that'll do it for this video, and I'd like to take this time near the end to correct a few facts I got wrong in the first video, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. I stated in the last episode that the first Five Nights game took place in 1987, when in reality it's not actually known when the game takes place. Rather, the year 1987 the Easter egg was referencing was likely a reference to the Bite of 87. Another correction I saw in the comments was the move Surf, and where it was actually obtained in relation to the Mew under the truck theory, wherein I stated it's obtained on the ship, where actually Cut is obtained and Surf is acquired much later in the game. And lastly, a slight hiccup I had when discussing the Ocarina of Triforce entry, when I stated that the cutscene at the end featured an N64 version of Skyward Sword. As it was pointed out by the comments, this isn't Skyward Sword and is actually Breath of the Wild. I don't know what happened here. I think I just saw that they were in the sky and just assumed, you know, it's Skyward Sword, and apparently I didn't look too close at Link's tunic. Alright, that'll really do it this time for this video. Thanks to everyone who watched all the way through. I know this one was a bit longer than usual. The next episode will mark the end of this giant iceberg, so look forward to that one in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, sorry, I kind of overshot my abilities to get this episode out, so I'd say the last part will definitely be out by the end of the month, but it is also going to be the largest section of the iceberg, so it might take a little bit longer for me to produce that. Regardless, I do appreciate all the recent support and expect more content like this in the future. If you want to be in the know when I upload the last part and other iceberg videos, consider subscribing to the channel. I set a personal soft goal of getting to 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2024, and we're closing in on that pretty soon, so if you'd like to help me achieve this little milestone, consider subscribing. Appreciate it. I also have a channel membership where I upload extra content that I usually wouldn't release on the main channel, and it's another way to support the channel, so there's that as well. Thanks again, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.